Hi everyone, welcome back to Perfect GMAT Julia's Critical Reasoning Rants and Practical Practice for the Pragmatic Person. Today we're going to talk about the most easy to identify critical reasoning question type. Complete the passage. They're easy to identify because of, you guessed it, the blank in the passage. Just because they're easy to identify and they're simple doesn't mean they're always easy to solve. We're going to work through some TTP practice questions so that I can show you my winning strategy for problems of this type. Which of the following most logically completes the passage? 4 blocks of a certain street in Trindeton are known as Restaurant Row because along those 4 blocks, most buildings have restaurants on their ground floors. The Trindeton Chamber of Commerce has suggested planting trees in openings in the sidewalk on Restaurant Row, the rationale being that planting trees would make the street more attractive, thus resulting in greater profits for the restaurants. To confirm that having trees growing in openings in the sidewalk along Restaurant Row would lead to the desired results, the Chamber will first determine. The first thing I look at is the word or phrase right before the blank. That's going to be where they set up the style of answer that they're looking for. Here, we're looking for what the chamber needs to determine first to confirm that their tree planting plans will result in greater restaurant profits. Let's look at our choices. To confirm that having trees growing in openings in the sidewalk along Restaurant Row would lead to the desired results, the chamber will first determine whether, to make space for trees, restaurants on Restaurant Row would have to significantly reduce the numbers of dining tables that they have on the sidewalk. This would be a good thing to establish. If the restaurants were using most or all of their outside seating space, cutting tables to plant trees wouldn't necessarily increase their profits and might cut into their profits. So this plan wouldn't work towards the stated goal. The chamber will first determine what types of trees would be the healthiest if they were planted along Restaurant Row. This one doesn't act in service of the chamber's stated goal, so it wouldn't be the first thing they needed to determine here. C. The chamber will first determine whether regulations in Trindeton allow for planting of trees in openings in public sidewalks. Again, this isn't directly tied to the desired result, so it's not going to be the first thing the chamber tries to determine. It might be a thing they determine eventually, but it isn't top of the list. D. The chamber will first determine whether working with the town to change parking regulations would do more to enhance the profitability of restaurants on Restaurant Row than would planting trees. This is a classic GMAT trap. It's trying to introduce another plan. The beauty of critical reasoning is in its simplicity, which is what I like to keep in mind in these situations. We're talking about one plan, planting trees in service of one goal, increasing restaurants' profits. This answer is overcomplicating things. We don't need another plan here, so it does not fit into the simple argument. And E, the chamber will first determine what proportion of owners of restaurants on Restaurant Row are in favor of planting trees and openings in the sidewalk there. This sounds helpful, but it's really not. The chamber is the one making the decision, not the individual restaurants. The sidewalks belong to the city. In the real world, this would probably matter more, but in the simple GMAT argument world, it's not related enough to count. Best answer, A. Shall we look at another example? Which of the following most logically completes the passage? Since every megawatt of power generated via a sustainable, non-polluting method, such as wind or solar power generation, theoretically represents a megawatt of power that would otherwise have been generated via burning fossil fuels, which creates pollution, the creation of a certain quantity of pollution is, in theory, avoided each time a megawatt of power is generated via a sustainable method. At the same time, the quantity of pollution avoided by generating a megawatt of power via a sustainable method has been declining because blank. So in theory, every megawatt of power generated by a non-polluting method saves us some amount of pollution because it's one less megawatt generated by a polluting method. However, the pollution savings per megawatt has been declining. Why? It could be that the polluting methods of generating energy have been getting cleaner. So if they used to pollute to the tune of, say, 10 units per megawatt, and these sustainable alternatives pollute to the tune of 0 units per megawatt, but the polluting methods have gotten their pollution generation down to 7 units per megawatt, then the sustainable methods would only be saving 7 units of pollution per megawatt instead of the 10 they used to save. It could be for another reason. Let's look at our choices and see. A. The quantity of pollution avoided by generating a megawatt of power via a sustainable method has been declining because government subsidies of sustainable power generation have resulted in a reduction in the end cost to the consumer of such power. This question isn't about cost, it's a megawatt to megawatt comparison on pollution levels, so this isn't the answer for us. Because B, technological advances have resulted in reductions in the amount of pollution created in generating a megawatt of power via burning fossil fuels. Ta-da! This is what I was thinking when I read the prompt initially. So this is my favorite answer so far. C, because the cost of generating a megawatt of power via burning fossil fuels has declined. Again, we're not concerned with cost here, just the relative pollution megawatt to megawatt of different methods of generating power. D, because the proportion of power generated via burning fossil fuels has been steadily declining. This one is tempting, but as we've already established, we're looking at a megawatt to megawatt comparison. Think of it like this. We're examining a micro scale mystery, and this is a macro scale solution. We need to keep it macro. E, because some countries are in the process of passing laws capping the total quantities of fossil fuel related pollution allowed to be created annually within their borders. This one is also a macro scale solution, so it is not the answer for us. Our best answer is B. One more problem to go. Which of the following best completes the discussion? The number of years that a person spends in school is negatively correlated with the likelihood of that person's becoming involved in criminal activity. Therefore, some people have called for increased focus on use of education as a tool for reducing crime. Others have raised the issue of the possibility that the reason for the observed correlation is not that in general education reduces a person's likelihood of becoming involved in crime, but rather that in general people who are relatively more motivated to pursue education are relatively less motivated to become involved in crime. Studies have provided reason to discount this possibility, however, as they have found that blank. Anytime there's something like this first sentence, I like to doodle it out in my workbook so I can make sure I'm keeping the relationships straight. In response to this, some have called for increased focus on education to lower chances of criminal activity. Others have wondered if the people more drawn to pursue education are less drawn to a life of crime, and that forcing everyone to go to school for more years wouldn't lower criminal tendencies at all because it's a personal motivation issue, a third issue causing both. Notice how the last sentence sets up the answer we're looking for. Let's see what fits best. A. Studies have provided reason to discount this possibility, however, as they have found that people who complete high school are less likely to become involved in crime than those who quit before they graduate. This is established in the question, so it doesn't add any new info. It also doesn't fit with the setup sentence fragment well. B, as they have found that some people who have spent many years in school are no more educated than others who have spent relatively few years in school. Some people could be a few people, it could be most people. This choice doesn't give us enough info to be helpful. C, as they have found that the majority of people who do not complete high school do not become involved in any significant criminal activity. The difference in the rates might be small and it could still be significant. It doesn't have to be a majority. This is an overstatement. It's an argument against a thing that we're not talking about. D, as they have found that states that increase the number of years people are legally required to attend school saw reduced levels of criminal activity from the people who therefore attended school for more years. We're looking for a reason to discount the possibility that people who are relatively more motivated to pursue education are relatively less motivated to pursue crime. This choice states that when legally required to attend more school, the same pattern of lower criminality occurs. It fits well with the passage and the setup sentence fragment. E, as they have found that the percentage of college graduates who become involved in crime is even lower than the percentage of high school graduates who become involved in crime. This is also basically established by the prompt, more education equals less crime, just like answer A. It's not really helpful for us. Best answer is D. What did you think? How were those questions for you? Complete the passage prompts are also a favorite in data integration two-part analysis questions, so it is a great skill to spend some time developing. Best of luck, keep studying, and I will see you next time.